Up and running. And thank you for whoever started that recording. And welcome everyone who is here. I'm so sorry we're having a little bit of technical difficulties getting our interpretation channels up and running and setting up participation options. All right, can everyone access the Q&A? Yes, we can see and hear you. Yes, thank you. For now, I think we will use the Q&A as our main form of participation. So thank you everyone for joining. Perhaps Holly, if someone has a question and they want to come off mute, we can set them up as a panelist so that they can ask their question out loud. But for now, yeah, please everyone use the Q&A option and we will do our best to monitor.
Great, thanks Elena. We'll get started now. Hello everyone and welcome to the Go Human Community Hub Grant Program 2023 application information session. We're really excited to kick off this program and to provide this information for everyone to get their applications prepared and submitted and get some really amazing projects implemented throughout the rest of this project contract footprint.
Stephen, just to jump in, since we couldn't get our interpretation channels up and running, and this is a great slide to be talking about this on, if we could just pause after we say a couple of sentences so that our Spanish interpreters can jump in and do live interpretation. Mark and Martin, does that work for you?
That does work. However, I'm not exactly sure if the time slot allotted for this will allow for consecutive interpretation. We may run out of time. I think everybody was expecting simultaneous, which is what we were prepared to do.
Yeah.
If you want to do this consecutive, it will literally double or triple the time that this will take.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask for anyone in attendance, and Mark and Martin, if one of you could translate my question to the attendees, if anyone requires Spanish interpretation at this time.
Sí, ¿qué tal? Buenas tardes. ¿Alguien va a necesitar interpretación al español en este momento de los participantes?
They can please raise their hand if they will.
Sí, por favor pueden levantar la mano si es que van a necesitar interpretación.
Okay, I am not seeing a raised hand. Okay, yeah, please, anyone mark in the chat and let me know if at any point you will need Spanish interpretation. But maybe yes, in the interest of time, we can move forward with ASL interpretation.
Así que si por favor cualquiera que necesite interpretación en español, en cualquier momento nos lo hacen saber, levante la mano por favor. Pero por cuestiones de tiempo simplemente haremos interpretación de lenguaje de señas nada más. Thank you, interpreters will remain on standby.
Thank you. Back to you, Stephen.
Great, thanks Elena. Before we get into the presentation, wanted to go over some logistics here. Again, thanks to everyone as we sort through some of these technical challenges. We will be recording this webinar, so it will be available immediately after, and we will be forwarding the presentation and the recording of the webinar to all attendees. So if there's at any point something that you have any questions about or want to review, feel free to refer to those, and we'll also be available for questions at any point in the first few days. I'm not sure if the mute in the phone things are pertinent right now, but in case they are, just please take care to be mindful of your audio. If there's any background noise, and when you're using the phone to mute and unmute, press *6. For inquiries, raise your hand if you have any questions, hit the raise hand button. Feel free to tap your question into the chat box. We will be considering questions as we go through the presentation, but we want to be mindful of time, and we'll have a few stop points throughout the presentation where we'll have some natural breaks in the presentation to review some questions, and we'll also review questions at the end of the presentation. So don't be shy about when you ask your question. We might get to it at that point, or we may hold off until a natural break, but we'll definitely get to it at the end of the presentation. Press star 9 when using the phone. And again, if you want to hold off until asking your questions at the end of the Q&A, that's fine, but please feel free to use it liberally and lean towards using it too much as opposed to not enough. So the agenda that we'll be looking at today, we're going to do a quick introductions and continue a little bit of the welcome that we're started here. We're going to have an overview about SCAG as the organization and some of the Go Human program, and then we'll get into the community hubs, have an overview of the program, and then walk through the application step by step, and then we'll have the remaining time for Q&A. So with the introductions, I guess it's good that I introduce myself. My name is Stephen Patchen. I am with Mark Thomas. Mark Thomas is a consultant that's been selected to implement the Community Hubs application program and program itself, in addition to the overall Go Human Safety Strategies campaign. And there's some other items as part of the overall program that we'll be touching on and giving you some information on. But Mark Thomas, myself, and I'll have my colleagues introduce themselves, starting with Jay.
Hi, my name is Jay Riddle. I'm a planner with Mark Thomas, and I'm supporting Stephen Patchen on this project. We're very enthusiastic to be working with SCAG on this Go Human project.
Thanks, Jay. And Marina?
Hi everyone, Marina Ramirez, also planner at Mark Thomas. I'm here if you have any questions and excited to work with you all.
Thanks, Marina. And Alina, I'll let you MC the SCAG folks.
Oh, sure. I'll just introduce myself for now. My name is Alina, Community Engagement Specialist at SCAG. And yes, thank you, someone, for pointing out that the chat is disabled. Will you please use the Q&A to introduce yourself? I'm so sorry for the technical difficulties that we are having, but we would love to know who's in the room, and hoping that the Q&A can serve the same purpose.
Thanks, Alina. So as we get to see the names of everyone in the chat, I just want to welcome everyone again. We're excited to have the opportunity to continue with all of those folks that we've worked with before, and any new organizations that are on the call. Welcome, and look forward to hearing about your projects in some capacity very soon. But before we get into the program discussion, I'm going to pass the floor back to Alina so she can provide some overview of SCAG and the Go Human program. So, Alina?
Sure. Yes. So thanks again, everyone, for showing interest in this grant program and for joining us today. SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments, as you may know, is a metropolitan planning association for the 6-county Southern California region, which encompasses the counties of Ventura, Los Angeles, Orange, San Bernardino, Riverside, and Imperial. This spans 191 cities, 6 counties, and 19.1 million residents. It is a large and diverse area. Next slide, please. In 2015, SCAG developed Go Human, which launched a media campaign, community event, and community resources aimed at promoting traffic safety and encouraging more walking and biking. This was launched to reduce traffic collisions and encourage people to walk and bike more. Next slide, please. The 2023 Go Human Safety Strategies encompass our efforts to support local agencies and community-based organizations to address the traffic safety of vulnerable and impacted roadway users in our communities. We'll speak in depth about the Community Hubs program in a minute. That is one of the strategies that we are promoting this season, but I wanted to highlight some of the other opportunities that folks can also participate in. So the local ad campaign program distributes safety advertisements for local campaigns upon request. That request is currently open and we will begin to fulfill print and media services soon. Next slide, please. We also offer the Kit of Parts, a temporary demonstration resource. So it's a lending library of safety materials to demonstrate potential infrastructure improvements. This is available year-round at no cost. And in 2023 through September, we will also be providing in-depth technical assistance for use of the Kit of Parts. Go Human will also be conducting a storytelling campaign centering the voices of community leaders in traffic safety across the region and mobility justice efforts. Next slide, please. And I'll hand it back to Stephen at this point.
Great, thanks, Elena. So the remainder of the presentation will outline the Community Hubs program and provide a step-by-step overview of the application process. So for the program goals, to provide some context, we'll review the goals and the funding priorities. But to start off, the primary goal is to build a street-level community resiliency and increase the safety of people most harmed by traffic injuries and fatalities, including without limitation, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, people with disabilities, and elders, particularly those walking and biking. And following up with those program goals, we really want a hub that co-locates multiple resources to respond to community need, acknowledging that community members meet issues holistically and not through separate agencies or sources of support. So it's a way to leverage a lot of efforts and programs and strategies that are occurring in our communities and support some the Go Human broadcasting and programming, broadcasting of messages and that sort of thing. So with the funding priorities, the community hubs they aim to improve traffic safety locally and across the Southern California region, leverage and build community leadership committed to traffic safety, and continuing along with the priorities, leveraging community venues from parks to community centers and virtual networks as sites to address immediate and long-term community care and needs. Also, want to prioritize projects that center historically excluded or disinvested communities, address mobility justice, disability justice, rural community investment, among other projects. One of the things we want to stress here is that we really are looking for creative ideas, innovative ideas that fall within the program eligibility. So as we continue to go through and you have project ideas, we're here to help see those ideas, flesh them out, and get them onto the application. So the funding eligibility, the organizations, 501c3s, those community-based organizations, nonprofits, social enterprises, the geography, it's the entire SCAG region we really want to get projects in each one of the counties, so we have some geographic equity. So if you have an idea of a project that is in one of the counties that are, Imperial, Ventura, and then Empire, Orange, and of course, Los Angeles, we want to encourage all of those project applications. And then equity consideration. Funding will be distributed to prioritize equity. So a lot of these projects, again, going back to the goals and objectives, they want to invest in those communities that have historically been disinvested. So the grant amount specifically, the projects can be awarded up to $40,000. So this is a significant sum. Awards are made on a reimbursement basis. So that's key. The reimbursement will be provided after SCAG receives and approves final deliverables. So it's a key point there that this is a reimbursed program. So getting into potential project types, again, we are encouraging new and innovative ideas that fall within the program eligibility requirements. With that said, some project types that could be considered as either a focal point or a jumping off point. Boosting traffic safety at local parks with community bicycle rides or wayfinding signage, distribution of safety materials like helmets, and partnering with the distribution with areas like libraries and community centers, and then a series of pop-up participatory events such as sidewalk performances. And those are some of the real world examples, but there's also virtual opportunities that are eligible. Programs such as virtual convenings to address traffic safety issues, a series of virtual trainings for community capacity building. The virtual projects, they could host community mobility rituals, such as weekly community bicycle rides, neighborhood walking tours, group scooter rolls, public transit excursions, and open streets events. The platform could include safe and protected space to address trauma experienced during the act of mobility and opportunities for active healing practices. In addition, the virtual platform can support community capacity building to strengthen safety initiatives and programs within the community. So there's in real world opportunities, there's the virtual opportunities for this program. So getting into our timeline, the early consideration deadline is April 17th by the end of the day, 11:59 p.m. We say early consideration because this is a very quick moving program. The earlier you get your application in, the earlier we can start processing that to determine its eligibility and make sure that it is complete, your application is complete, and we can get that project moving as soon as possible. The final deadline for applications is April 21st. And again, that's at the end of the day, 11:59 p.m. When we move into May and June, we expect the following to occur for awarded projects: the notice of conditional award, any scope refinement, and then onboarding for awardees to get into the hub project implementation. So with that implementation timeline, in July, for those awarded projects, we will be having a mid-project check-in to discuss how the project is moving ahead, to address any questions or concerns, and chart a path forward to project completion. That project completion will be August 31st. That's a hard date. Everything will have to start be wrapping up at that point. And then September 8th, from the end of the project implementation until September 8th, the awardees will be working on the final report and documentation. And then that will be due on September 8th. And then after that, once SCAG has approved, then the reimbursement process will commence. So what are we looking for? And this table here outlines how the projects are going to be evaluated. All applicants must fill out a Community Hub program application available on the project website, which we'll have in a second here. We'll promote that. Project proposals will be evaluated. Impact of the project, 30%. The engagement piece will be 30%. Feasibility of implementing the project, 20%. And then the cost effectiveness will be 20%. So going through the application walkthrough. The application elements. We have the applicant checklist, the applicant info, the project info, and its timeline and its budget. We're going to walk through each one of these separately. So one of the key pieces here for that needs to move quickly and immediately is developing and obtaining a letter of support. Applicants will be required to submit a letter of support from the local jurisdiction in which the project is being implemented. Applicants must provide an additional letter of support if you're proposing activities that utilize the facilities of another agency or organization. So timing is really critical to obtain these letters of support. So you should submit your request as soon as possible to allow for review and turnaround on the requested agency's end that you're obtaining the letter of support. SCAG can help pull in any jurisdictional staff to facilitate this. So if you have any questions or having any challenges with the letter of support, please contact SCAG and myself, and we'll have some contact information at the end of the slide deck, sorry. And right here is a link on the project website. You can click on this link here, and this will provide a letter of support template. The letter of support template is optional. We provide this just to expedite the process, but you're more than welcome to draft your own letter of support. But again, this is a link here, and you see some other items here, and we'll be emphasizing this throughout through the presentation. But each one of these links are a helpful and or important link for the application process. So I teased the link beforehand, but here is the link for the application to access the application. As you can see here, when you go on the project website, there'll be a little box here to apply, and that will give you enter into the portal for the online application. This is the front page. This graphic on the right, this is the front page of the application. If you are having any issues, this is a JOT form platform application. If you have any issues with that, this is also right here a link to a PDF version of the application that you can fill out and submit, and we'll have some information on how to submit a PDF version. You can also access this link just to get a sneak preview, a quick preview of the entire application in one document, because the online application does take you through pages, and you have to fill out each page before moving on. So this link is very helpful if you want to provide a PDF application, or if you want to get a chance to see what the entire application looks like and see all the questions at one time. So the first prompt you'll get once you get into the application online is for the checklist. The application checklist asks for confirmation for several items, including the grant completion date, ensuring that you can meet that August 31st date. Also confirming that you can obtain all necessary permits if applicable. confirming your organization's eligibility and allowable project costs, and also provide required insurance if necessary. Also in the checklist, letters of support, which we mentioned, in a unique entity identifier, which is part of sam.gov. So if you have any experience with grants in sam.gov, that unique entity identifier will be familiar. If not, we're more than happy to help you out with that piece of the application. And then a W-9 will be required, an incorporation letter or a business license if you aren't a 501c3 and you are a business. We'll need that incorporation letter or business license. Additional application information. Application will request various applicant information, including organization name, contact name, social media presence, if any, and then we start to get into a brief description of your organization. We'd like to know a little bit more about the missions, goals, communities you serve, demographics, that sort of thing. Some more additional application information. If you have a fiscal sponsor partnership, that would be something to note. In addition to SCAG partnership history, if you've embarked with any projects with SCAG, any grants you've received before, please note that, and required insurance. But as you can see here on the application, organizations without insurance may be considered on a case-by-case basis in regards to the type of project that's being presented. Continuing on with the project information, the project name, the dollar amount requested, and then the project elements. As you can see here at the bottom, we have a few project elements that are part of a checklist, and please check all of those that apply. The next step on the project application will be the project statement. Applicants will be prompted to outline specifics of what their project is intending to accomplish. We encourage you to be specific and detailed, and identify the communities that you're serving and the safety issues that are going to be addressed. Also want to note there are word limits for these that you will see. Here, this will identify the word limit, and then you have the word limit counter here. So all of these give you some framework to answer your questions. With only 200 words, it's very important that you be very thoughtful with your language as far as specifics and details. For project info, some tips for success. Make a strong and specific connection to the people most harmed by the traffic injuries and fatalities, and clearly identify the safety concerns connected to the program goal of increasing the safety of people most harmed by traffic injuries and fatalities. So again, we're really emphasizing that you want to be specific on these communities and detail on how you're going to make an improvement in those regards. After the project statement, the application will request information pertaining to project implementation. The applicant will outline specific implementation strategies to address the issues stated in the project statement. You'll also be prompted to identify objects and outcomes and strategies to evaluate the project's effectiveness. And you all have an estimate for the number of people that will benefit from the project, explain the steps to reach this audience, and propose strategies to leverage the project into a long-term initiative. So we really want to see projects that can have, this would be a seeding for long-term efforts. So some tips for the proposed project piece of the application. Really be specific and detailed about your approach for addressing the traffic safety issues and for the targeted community. Provide those clear objectives and outcomes that align with the Go Human program goals. Include equitable and/or participatory methods of determining success, and thoughtfully position the project to strategically build on existing community resources and needs. So up next on the application for the project info, we'll be asking for the qualifications. And after outlining those project on the previous, outlining the project implementation specifics, we'll be looking for the experience that the organization has in similar projects and implementation strategy. Tips for this piece: demonstrate experience with similar projects. Speak to qualifications that can address traffic safety in a target area in an authentic relationship to the target populations. Detail a plan that can be implemented within the implementation period, and identify resources and/or partnerships that can support the work. After all that, then we need to think about the project timeline. You'll be prompted to identify the timeline for several milestones and pieces of the project. As you input the time, the dates into these bars, they're going to, you just input, how it has here, month, day, and year, and be specific for each one of these. This will help you think through the items that you need and the sequencing on which you need to get them. So if the project start and project end date, have an idea on those, but then things like securing permits and city council approval, you need to think about when those need to occur and how quickly you can have those obtained to get the project up and running. The kit of parts safety demonstration project dates, that's only if applicable, if that's something that you're considering. Continuing with the project dates, any events that you're considering, add those dates, messaging materials, distributions, any safety materials like helmet distribution. Again, those are dates that we want to know, but then there are also opportunities to add any other items that are time sensitive or identify as a milestone within your project. Enter that that item here, that the other item would be, and then the date within the date box here. So there are opportunities to add some ideas that are not captured in the examples that we provided. For eligible expenses, the project's eligible expenses should be directly related to the project, include but not limited to labor costs such as coordination, design, facilitation, setup training, printing of items, permits or fees related to the project, bicycle helmets purchased to support bicycle education, supply or equipment rental fees, and virtual platform subscription fees. And products or giveaways not tied to a safety education component. Sorry, these are ineligible expenses. We're jumping to the ineligible. So these are not things that we can provide funding for. So that would be products or giveaways, stickers, raffle prizes, food and beverages, and plants. Office furniture, paint, chalk, event entertainment or music, advertising that's not directly related to the proposed project. And then finally, and this is a long list, unfortunately, but implementation of a study plan or program, habitat conservation plans, lobbying efforts, and items that are not indicated in the original project budget. Those are all ineligible expenses. And again, we will be providing this presentation, slide deck, and this webinar as a follow-up. So these items you'll have for reference as you build out your application. For the project budget, it's very important that we stress that we have a template for the budget that must be used. For that project template on the project website, again, going back to these application resources that I mentioned, this is the link to the project budget template. You click on this link and it'll automatically download that template for you. And what that template looks like is a picture here, is a screen grab of what the budget template looks like for folks who may have applied for SCAG funding in the past that will be familiar to you. With these, the template is essentially a plug and play document. It will request staff hourly rates and numbers of hours to be used on the project. It will also request estimates for the direct costs. Then the calculations will be processed and the budget determined based on the applicant's submitted information. So you put in all your hourly rates, you put in the hours of the folks that are going to be working on this, and it will tally up those costs for you. The direct cost that you're going to need, put those in, and the spread, the sheet will do all of that work for you. When you get into the project budget application, read the README tab for the instructions, and that'll give you additional information on how to fill out the in specific of what I was mentioning in an overview, but listing the job titles of the staff, list the job titles and not the names, list the hourly rate for each staff, and you must support the hourly rate with documentation if it's pay stubs, but we do need the documentation of how much that staff person is being paid, so we can justify that to the grant funders. And then enter number of labor hours in a spreadsheet. And again, that automatically calculates that information. Direct cost and hard costs such as printing, permit cost, bicycle helmets, equipment rentals. It may also include services such as photography and videography. Enter amounts for direct costs. You must support these costs with documentation. And that documentation can be a screenshot of estimates that you've gotten from vendors. And you'll need those screenshots again to justify the amount of your direct costs. It doesn't have to be a screenshot, it can be an actual receipt, but we need something that provides the amount of that estimate from the vendor. After entering your hourly rates, labor hours and direct costs, the budget spreadsheet, automatically tally up everything for you, and you'll be ready to go. Going back to that supporting documentation, just to reiterate that for the budget documentation, for direct labor, we'll need to see the background for why you came up with that amount. And that's again for pay stubs, and direct cost, those vendor quotes. This information is outlined on the budget documentation guidance, and that that document is also available on those list of links that we've been referring to before. So that this budget documentation guide will provide additional detail for all of those that budget development process that you'll be drafting up. So once you get to the end of the application, then we will be asking for attachments. These include your budget, any supporting documentation, and any additional materials as necessary, including letters of support from the jurisdiction and letters of support from any agencies you're partnering with. And then submitting your application, again, you can use the online application. If you run into any issues with that, there is the PDF version that is available, and you would email that PDF to myself and Alina at these at our email addresses here. So with application support, applicants, you guys are encouraged to contact program support staff for application consultation. That program support staff will be myself and the Mark Thomas team. We are offering one-on-one consultations, and they are available at the link that you see there, the Calendly link. So you just log into that link, and it will provide opportunities on a calendar, 60-minute meetings to have one-on-one consultations for your projects. We highly encourage everyone to take advantage of those. It's a way for you to kind of brainstorm or get into specific questions and details about your project to ensure that you're really getting into the details and the specifics that are requested for the problem statement and for the project descriptions and those sorts of things. So we're more than happy to help all folks that are interested and available. So highly recommend that you get onto Calendly and get something scheduled at that point. But just in general, for any application questions and support, please feel free to email me with all those questions at my email address that you see here. So with that, we can start to entertain questions.
And I'd like to pause at this point to see if folks have access to the chat now and are able to unmute themselves. If so, we invite you to type your question back in the Q&A or the chat, and or raise your hand and unmute yourself for questions. Okay. Okay, I also want to check back in on translation. If anyone has translation, oh, let's see, I see some hands up. Okay, yeah, before we get to the hands up, I'd like to check back in on translation needs for Spanish interpretation. Mark or Martin, if you could please ask one more time if anyone needs interpretation.
Absolutely, thank you. Muy buenas tardes, aquí sus intérpretes. ¿Necesitarían interpretación al español en este momento? Por favor, sean tan amables de decirlo en el chat o levantar la mano. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and please let us know. Okay. Looking back in at the attendees. All right, I'm going to start with Jim. Jim, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, I think I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So my question was regarding the local jurisdiction requirement for letters of support. If we're working, say, with a couple of YMCAs, what letter of support do you want? Is that a county, city council member, an assembly member? A little guidance on that would be helpful.
Any of those would work for us, actually, any of the things that you just named. A local agency would include anything, yeah, like an assembly member, like an elected official, a transit provider that has jurisdiction over the project area. It's really tied to the project area. So the city, county, a council of government, even. Yeah, does that help?
Yeah, that does. Thank you.
Yeah, and the representative that signs the letter can be the elected official, can be a city manager, director of public works, a transportation director, anything like that. All right. Next up is Josiah Bruni. If you could unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you so much for all you guys do. My question was based around the insurance. I've done SCAG before and I didn't see the dollar amount. Is it 2 million or 5 million this time?
Oh my, our insurance from SCAG was not able to make it today, but I can pass along your question. We have some information in the guidelines on the last 2 pages of the guidelines that detail our insurance requirements. But Josiah, if you could put your question in the chat, I'm going to pass it along to our insurance rep because I don't have the answer off the top of my head. All right, thank you. And next we have Linda.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity. My question, today's presentation, it'll be sent out to individuals who are on this call, or should we put our email address to gain access to the presentation?
Yeah, we'll be sending out a recording of this presentation and the presentation slides to everyone who registered for this event. So
Thank
just
you.
make sure that you are registered. We're also gonna make our best effort to put it up on the website, but we know this is a quick turnaround and getting it up on the website is probably gonna take a couple of days. So just a heads up.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Jim and Linda, if you don't have remaining questions, if you could put your hand down so that we can move on to the next folks. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions that we have not addressed yet? Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Yvonne.
My question is the insurance required for all projects or is it just if it's applicable?
Okay, another insurance question that I'm sure I will need to forward to my insurance rep. But I think the answer to that one is that it's as applicable. So we consider on a case-by-case basis, and our risk assessment manager looks over each project and determines like the necessary insurance requirements for each project based on what you propose. So I think it's a case-by-case basis, but we can talk more during the application period if you'd like to discuss that further.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Alina.
Yeah, Andres,
This
please.
is Andres. I can offer a little bit of additional guidance on the insurance requirements as we receive that insight from our risk folks. So, so as Alina had mentioned, please look at the guidelines for the specific insurance required, as well as the amount of insurance that is required. So the general liability requirement, the baseline is $1 million. If your organization does not have W-2 employees, very likely that is a situation where you will not need workers' compensation. If you are not using a vehicle to perform any of the work of your project, very likely you will not need automobile insurance. The application provides a field where you can describe your situation. So if you don't have a car, you're not going to use a car, you don't have employees, you can provide that justification, and we'll review applicants for exemptions on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you.
My apologies. The timeline for the project, is it a 1-year project, 2 years? I didn't see that. I might have missed it.
Hi, Linda. Thank you. This is a very short project period. So the end of the project period is August 31st of this year, 2023. All right, I see a couple of hands up. Maybe we can go to Genevieve.
Hi, if we're applying for multiple projects within that time frame, is it okay if they're in different areas throughout LA County?
Yes, Genevieve, I see your question in the Q&A as well. Thank you for voicing that. So the community concept, I think we're hoping to leverage community gathering spaces and hoping to leverage like specific communities. So I think a proposal could be made for like a variety of locations, as long as you make a very strong case as to like how that connects to the community, a very specific community that you're trying to serve, and a specific community that is impacted by traffic safety issues, and that you have a connection with. So I think a case could be made for that.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. All right, and I see a hand up from Vicky.
Hello, and I also asked this question in the Q&A, just came up as anonymous attendee. When I had initially started filling out the application, you know, there's a part where you have to indicate what type of organization you have. And so nonprofit wasn't really in the selection, but you know, you can select corporation. But then following that, it asks questions about the percentage of ownership. And a person can found a nonprofit, but you don't technically own it because it's a public benefit corporation. So since the nonprofit isn't technically owned by anybody, should I answer the question of the owner with the founder? And following that, it asks what percentage of the company the owner, quote unquote, founder owns. And since you don't own it, you just found it, what should the answer to that question be?
Hi, Vicky. I am actually not familiar with these questions. I do not remember including those in our application. I'm wondering if maybe you're looking at another SCAG program. I'm just wondering if you could double check if that's the Community Hubs program application that you're looking at. Because yeah, so for this program, 501c3 nonprofits are eligible. Corporations and like private entities are not eligible for this grant application. So just wondering if you could double check that or direct me to maybe where you're seeing this question.
Yeah, I'm gonna double check that. Maybe it was an insurance question.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe more details. Thank you. Okay. I see a hand up from Jisho.
Yes, thank you. My question is just regarding the getting permits from the city, because I'm thinking about potentially going for temporary pop-up infrastructure. What kind of permits exactly do we need from the city?
That will actually really depend on the city that you're working with and the type of project. So SCAG does not, like the permits aren't something that SCAG requires. It's actually going to be something that your local jurisdiction, your project jurisdiction is going to require. And we just like to know in the application if there will be a pop-up demonstration, temporary demonstration, like require permits, because one, we could provide support with obtaining those or streamlining them, and two, they do just require coordination with the city and understanding their timelines, so that can be a little bit of a challenge sometimes.
Got it. So do we need to have the permits prior to submitting the applications, or is it okay to apply for it after?
It's okay to apply for it after. It's just we just like to know upfront if those are going to be required or if that's something that you're going to be working on, because they affect your timeline, and we're just wondering if we can provide some sort of support.
Okay, I see. And in that case, it's okay to also just get a letter of support from one of the city council members.
Yes. Okay. Yes. and that is required with your application.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mhm. All right, Vicky, if you don't have any further questions, can you put down your hand? And I'm going to move on to Paulina. Thank you.
Hello, I just had a question regarding the allowable expenses. Like at Youth Leadership Institute, we work with youth and we like to pay them stipends when they participate. So it would youth stipends be an allowable expense, like for youth participation in projects?
That is a good question. I'm wondering if maybe Andres can speak to that question.
Yes, I can address that. So stipends and honorariums are not allowed costs through this program, and that is the nature of the funding source of this program. If you're looking for any community members or other like youth, for instance, to make a contribution to your project, they should be budgeted as 1099 contractors. And so so they need to be present within your other direct costs in your budget, and we will need to see some sort of budget documentation that supports the rate or the cost for the work.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to keep on the lookout for any raised hands. Or any questions in the chat? Okay, great.
There is a question in the Q&A from Eugene Valdez.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, I will answer this in the Q&A as well. But reimbursements will be made within 60 days of approval of the final report and the deliverables and the receipt of the final invoice. So within 60 days. All right. Any other questions that we have not gotten to? Great. Thank you, everyone. Any last thoughts from SCAG team members or Mark Thomas team members?
We have started to get some scheduling on the Calendly. So thank you those who have scheduled those appointments, and again, highly encourage everyone to take advantage of that opportunity.
All right, thanks so much, everyone.
Nina,
Go ahead.
may I offer one additional kind of consideration for the folks on the line? That as you were looking through the requirements and you're thinking about how this can fit and how this can work for your organization, your needs, your communities, and you think, oh, well, this seems difficult or not sure if this fits, please bring that up to the consultant team, to Alina. In previous kind of community grants that we've distributed to organizations across the region, we have always tried to make projects work and have supported organizations to meet those requirements. So I want to say as a remark, take this as encouragement and not discouragement. Talk up to our team about what you're feeling and what those needs are, and perhaps we can find something that can work for you and your communities. It's our priority to make these awards and for folks to take advantage of them.
Thank you, Andres. Okay, I see one more hand up from Josiah.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. I had one last question. Can we apply for multiple counties?
That is something that we haven't considered before. I would love to consider a project like that. Going back to, I think, Genevieve's question about multiple locations, as long as you can really tie your project to a specific community that you have connections with, not just like, your organization is coming into, someone else's community and kind of defining traffic safety for them. So a specific community that like you are serving in the locations, and you can make that like real case for a through line for your project. I think that, yeah, that could make a very strong case.
Okay, yes, thank you so much for that. Thank you.
All right, if there are no last thoughts, comments, or questions, and we're on the lookout, we can wrap up. And as a reminder, we will be sending the recording of this webinar and presentation materials to all registrants. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you also.